Welcome back to the Iconoclast Music Podcast. This is host Greg Marra, and I'm joined by my buddy, co-host Bill Lonero. Bill, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this podcast here.
Yeah, dude. So today we have Andrew Bennett, the author of Eruption in the Canyon, 212 Days and Nights with the Genius of Eddie Van Halen, and written and photographed by Andrew Bennett. Now, usually when I prepare for my podcasts, I do a bit of research, and that can go two ways. It can help you, and it can actually answer your questions, which is a bad thing, I think. In this case, I'm going to try to ask the questions that are not answered in the book, and hopefully Andrew will be forthcoming with more about him, because I love Eddie Van Halen for my entire life. I mean, since I'm like old enough to even realize that I loved Eddie Van Halen. I mean, in '78, that's when the first album came out, and I was like 6. So, you know, when you're a little kid, you're always hearing great music from Eddie Van Halen. So, you know, I have like almost 50 years of research. So there's a lot of questions I have. A lot of them were actually answered in this book, Eruption in the Canyon. So what we're going to do with this episode is hopefully ask Andrew some questions that he hasn't answered in other podcasts, and are not answered in the book, because I think it's very important for folks to go out and just grab this book. This is, you know, he's still printing these himself. I don't believe he's found, well, not that he's found, but he's transferred over to a publisher who's taken over the reins on getting these books distributed. When you buy this book, you get it, and it comes from him, like directly comes from him. So there's something to be said about that. And the pictures in this book are just absolutely amazing. Inside, a peek behind the curtain inside 5150. And man, what can I say? The story is just fantastic. It's a series of short stories within the book, and each one of them are super captivating. It's like, I think you and I talked about this before, Bill. It's like, you know, there are people in your life where you're like, you can't wait for them to stop, finish, talking, because you get it. I know who you are, and it's just, there's not a lot of layers to certain people. With a guy like Andrew Bennett, obviously Eddie Van Halen, you'd never be able to peel back all the layers. This book sort of does that. It kind of goes behind the curtain and gives you a peek inside 5150, which for me has been a lifelong dream to just be on the property. I've got friends who have been there and filmed Eddie and went inside and the whole thing, and I know Fran, who was Paul Stanley's guitar tech, did some work there, and it's like you're kind of getting the story, but it'd be better just to go yourself. It'd just be nice to just be a fan and a fly on the wall, but I don't think many of us are going to get that opportunity unless they open it up as a museum. I don't see that happening either. So for now, we have, boy, that was long-winded. We have Eruption in the Canyon. So Bill, tell me your backstory on, your Eddie Van Halen connection, and, some of the things because I don't know that you have the book yet, but yeah, I know you have some excerpts from it and, some of your research as well.
Well, I mean, like you, right? Grow up. I mean, Eddie was the king, I mean, he still is. And in the world of guitar, I mean, if you think about it, when Jimi Hendrix came out, right? Jimi Hendrix had really 3 albums to make an impact. And his impact really didn't happen until after he died, right? Eddie Van Halen was an immediate impact upon the world. And it wasn't only the impact as a guitar player, it was an impact as a guitar technician, as a guitar builder, as an amp builder, as an innovator. He influenced millions and millions of guitar players while he was still alive. So I know I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, but Eddie Van Halen, in my eyes, is a more influential guitar player than Jimi Hendrix was. But Jimi Hendrix was obviously an influential guitar player.
It's like one of the first. That's really what it was.
That's really what it was, right? I mean, Jimmy was doing stuff that nobody was doing. But right. Eddie just took it to a whole other level. And
you're right.
But you know what the cool thing about both of those guys is, when you see them on stage, they both were having so much fun. They were smiling. You look at pictures of Jimi Hendrix, and he was just smiling and having a good old time. And Eddie Van Halen, it's hard to find a single photo of him on stage not smiling.
Absolutely.
The guy, like Andrew said in the book, he was always holding a guitar. Every time he saw Eddie, he was holding a guitar. He was playing, and he was music. And he truly was. He truly was music. He embodied everything that we think about when we think about musician. That was Eddie Van Halen.
You're right. And, when you talk about levels of musicians, I always feel like the ones that I like the best are the ones that are most honest. So they're just basically putting their art out there and they really don't care. Maybe they care, but it seems to me that they don't care about what the response is. They're just putting their art out there and whatever happens, happens. Jimi Hendrix was definitely that. He was innovative in the way that his guitar sounds, translated over to, into his songs and how he presented his guitar. And I know that he has been, in interviews talking about, Jimi Hendrix being that he wasn't really, super confident in his voice. It was really more just a means to have someone singing these songs.
Stevie Ray was like that.
Similar, yeah. So these guys have all leveled up. I mean, to me, you've got Ritchie Blackmore in the mid 70s, but and I'm sure there are many other examples, but it just doesn't seem like when you talk about a revolutionary guitar player, it's Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen. I mean, Dimebag, definitely Dimebag, but Randy he pulled Rhoads. From those early influences.
Yeah, right.
Give me another
Randy
one.
Rhoads. I mean,
of
Randy
course.
Rhoads.
Randy Rhoads, Steve Vai, definitely Steve Vai.
I mean, Joe Satriani.
Absolutely.
It's funny because in the world of guitar, right, it's like two bookends. You have Jimi Hendrix on one end, you have Eddie Van Halen on the other end, and everything in between is influenced by those two guys. And it's just like, you look at Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson, right? You have Elvis on one end, Michael Jackson on the other end, and everything in between was influenced by those. I mean, you look at Robert Plant and Mick Jagger and John Lennon, they all say they were influenced by Elvis Presley, and you get a lot of these soul singers today, R&B singers that were influenced by Michael Jackson. Those two were the bookends when it comes to vocal music, and Sinatra, of course, as well. But Elvis really was the first rock star.
Right.
The first true, crossing over rock star. So, Eddie Van Halen, I mean, the things he did were just incredible. I mean, and he had patents, that's the thing. He had the patent for the tabletop thing where he can lay his guitar flat while he's playing. He had patents for the D-Tuna, patents, I think, for the 5150, for the Wolfgang. Right. I mean, the dude was a genius.
The thing that always is amazing to me is, when Rock Band came out, we eventually, were able to hear the songs without the vocals. Now, I think David Lee Roth fit for those first, 5 albums or whatever it was, 4 or 5 albums. Might have been 6. Sorry, guys. Eddie Van Halen, purists, sorry. However many albums David Lee Roth was on, he was on. But I would love to have heard him without the vocals. And now we get that opportunity. You can hear isolated guitar tracks on YouTube, Eddie Van Halen. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear the guy, his finger attack, his pick attack, his finger on the left hand. Hear those little notes in between, the tone. How did it sound by itself? And some things that we'll bring up today are I'm kind of leading into some things that were a revelation to me, in that Michael Anthony played bass on the very first Van Halen album. After that, it was Eddie Van Halen. I was good with Eddie Van Halen playing bass on those records. Sorry, Sammy. Sorry, well, sorry, Michael, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's he says, she says, right? How much did Michael play? I mean, did Eddie play 51% of the bass on the album? Or did Michael Anthony play 51% of the bass on the album? We weren't there. So
right. That's a good point. It is a good point.
It kind of sucks, right? Because, we're talking about Eddie now posthumously, which really sucks because
absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah.
In my lifetime, as a guitar player, he's the Randy Rhoads, when he died, I was too young, the impact of it didn't hit me, but the impact of Eddie's passing hit me because Malcolm Young's passing hit me hard. Because, AC/DC is and was my favorite band. Angus is the reason I play guitar. And Malcolm's rhythms were, so tight and perfect. And he was such a great songwriter and rhythm player. But as a soloist, Eddie was the guy that, inspired so many. And his loss is huge. I mean, I think it affected so many people, not just guitar players, but just so many people in general. And I think it hit people a lot harder than they thought it would.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer over to our other means of connecting with Andrew Bennett, which is a Zoom meeting. So we're going to take a little break here, have a little sponsor recognition, and we'll come right back with Andrew Bennett.
This podcast is sponsored by Strap Tight Strap Locks, the most secure, affordable guitar strap locks on the market. Install and remove in under 2 seconds. No need for any tools. Endorsed by legends such as Joe Satriani, Glenn Hughes, Carl Verheyen, and more. Get yours at straptight.com.
Okay, welcome to the podcast, Andrew Bennett. Andrew, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, honestly, I think over a year ago I contacted you to do the show, and I put the show down because I got a job doing some other work, and now I'm back, and I'm more stoked than ever to have you on the show. So welcome.
Thanks.
So Eruption in the Canyon is what we're talking about. 212 Days and Nights with the Genius of Eddie Van Halen. You are the writer, the photographer. You also assembled the book, and you're sending it to people directly. Can you talk about your process of just putting the book together, getting it printed, getting it looking great? It's really concise as far as the writing goes. It's super interesting. It's funny. It's in a lot of ways, it's like, you can't believe the stories in this book. Can you talk about your process of, okay, now I have this collection of photos and stories, and now I want to put this together and get it out to people?
Yeah, I mean, for years, I left there in 2007. So, I wrote the book in 2019. So, for 12 years, the stories were basically told to like some friends, or if I was at a party and uncomfortable, I would just tell a couple of stories and try to leave the party. But, I had all these stories, I had all this footage, I have all these photos, and, nothing had been done with them. They'd been sitting on a shelf for 12 years. And I'd been approached, numerous times from different publishers and other people about writing a book. And every time somebody would approach me, like, have you ever thought of writing a book? And I was like, no, it never occurred to me to live with a legend and not write a book about it. Like, they came at me like it was an original idea. But nobody was ever on the same page as me, which was, I have no interest in gossip. I have no interest in talking about any dark side, nothing. My book, I just wanted it to be what it's like, that part of my life has been over the years, is just telling my friends stories. That was it. I was like, dude, like, here's, this happened on a random Thursday when Eddie jumped on Alex's moving car. Like, just what it's like to be there, man, to watch the band, to be around Ed. So, my idea was always that I just wanted to do a coffee table book and add in a bunch of photos. And so I spent, probably about a year writing all of these stories. And let's see, I started writing them in New York. Then I was on some island between Florida and Cuba for 3 months. I went to go direct a music video, and I just decided to stay and work on the book. So the process was long. And then, then it came to, and I just had to save my money, basically, so I could print the first run on my own. I didn't really think about taking it to publishers. I've been so dismayed by everybody who just wanted gossip that I figured the only way I can get this out is to do it myself. So saved up for, to get the first printing done. And I have a designer friend who did the layout for the book, who's an amazing designer, who also used to be the video commissioner at Roadrunner Records.
Wow.
So this guy and I go way back, from like doing videos for like Dream Theater and Nickelback to all of a sudden he's designing the Van Halen book. Anyway, I started to ramble. It just, it was a couple of years to kind of get it together, make sure it was all done right. I just kind of went through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that, everything was accurate, everything was respectful. like within the book, none of these stories have my opinions in them. I never try to, you'll never see me say, this is how Ed was feeling.
Right.
Very simple reason why. I don't know how the fuck Ed was feeling. If you have figured out Eddie Van Halen's emotions, please tell me, because, he was a very, very complex man. I mean that in a good way. But I was never going to make assumptions on what people were thinking, assume a situation. It was just like, yo, here's what happened today. Him and Alex got in a fight. Alex tried to drive off. So Eddie jumped on top of his car. And, and people were like, well, what was the fight about? It was simple. I don't know, man. It's two brothers in a band. They've been fighting about anything. I have no idea.
Well, the thing that I love...
Does the fight matter? Or would you rather hear about Eddie Van Halen jumping on a car?
I love the fact that you said at noon, as an artist, you can be in a great mood, but by sort of 3 or 4 p.m., whatever, you'll be in a completely different mood. And things like that, those little candid inside sort of things, like almost saying, look, we're all kind of the same in this artistic creative world. We go through these sort of mood shifts, depending on things that happen. And when you talk about being, just talking about the facts that happened, I love that. I love that you said, this is just what I have observed. This is what happened, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't seem to have a filter attached to it. It's just, this is what I observed.
Yeah. I mean, when Ed was really, we're going to kind of go back here, but when I first met Ed, and, we can get into that, but when I met him, I only had one question for him, which is, why do you want me to film you? I mean, he wasn't going to make a movie. There was never plans to make a movie. He just wanted it documented. And I said, why do you want it documented? And he said, because I want people to see how hard I work.
Yeah.
And that was it. He wasn't trying to make his own documentary, do his side of Van Halen. None of that. He's just like, just show people that I'm in here 18 hours a day, man. This is what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love the fact that in other interviews, like I said, in me doing my research, you sort of learn things about the person you're about to interview. And one of them was, you've taken that notion into your personal directing past working with Eddie Van Halen. That's now the way that you approach it, strong work ethic, blame Eddie Van Halen for your strong work ethic, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I've said that I've said that, when I'm on set directing music videos, I'm usually pretty laid back. Like, I've prepared for the day. So, today should actually be fun if we prepared hard enough. But in working with the producers I work with, and they see me up at 3 a.m. dissecting detail after detail. And whenever they've complained, I said to a group of producers once, if you don't like my fucking work ethic, call Eddie Van Halen and blame him. Because that's where I learned it.
Yeah.
And I explained to them the way that, I'm sure musicians see a record, which is once this video is out, it's out.
Yeah.
That's it. It's final. So why wouldn't I nitpick this and pay attention to every single detail and push everybody around me to work harder? Yeah. Absolutely. All of that came from Eddie Van Halen. So
there, in the other interviews, look, if you go out there and search Andrew Bennett, Eruption in the Canyon, you're going to find the other interviews. I don't want to repeat those. And so I've decided to ask you more questions about yourself because, again, when you're researching someone, the questions you have get answered whenever you hear them speak or you read the book. So I want to encourage folks to, let's just do that. Let's take a pause and talk about where can folks find the actual, Eruption in the Canyon, not a paperback copy. If you can get into that a little bit, and then I want to go into your sort of personal directing.
Oh yeah, I guess
career.
We should touch on that.
Yeah.
There was a guy I was working with who was editing the book. It's just the words, commas, all the little details. That guy turns out to be a con man, and he took a file and is trying to sell paperback and Kindle versions on Amazon. I'm not going to out his name because I'm a gentleman, but Also because my publisher told me not to. But so he's a con man. He's got this version on Amazon. So right now, to get the book, please do not go to Amazon. Just go to eruptioninthecanyon.com. I'm at home wrapping him up and packing him, sending him myself.
Absolutely.
But the book, and it got more attention. It did get the attention of Simon & Schuster. So they're taking over the publishing.
Excellent.
And they're getting rid of the Amazon bootlegger. I was very lucky. Once this guy bootlegged the book, a week later, Simon & Schuster signed me.
Wow.
And
incredible. Congratulations.
Thanks. And I was like, wow, that's really cool to be signed, to be on the roster. And the biggest part was, I just inherited a shit ton of lawyers.
That's great.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
I couldn't afford to sue this guy or figure out the Amazon process. Man, I'm an epileptic director. I'm not good at those things.
Yeah. So I think that's the important thing to sort of start with is, I don't want to ask you a bunch of questions about what's in the book. I would encourage people to go buy the book. It's 50, what is it? $51.50. I think you still have it at, and it's worth every penny. Yeah. It's a gloss. I mean, this is a real deal. Like all of the pictures in here, if you've ever wondered what it was like to be inside 5150 Studios, this gives you each and every corner that you would ever have wanted to know about. So buy the book. So we're going to get back into this.
Yeah,
book.
I'll throw this in there too. The book, I'm not going off on American pride here or anything like that, but the book was printed in America by like one of the most reputable printers. So, I didn't go, I could have gone to China and paid, pennies.
Right.
But, you want to talk about Ed influencing me in my work ethic, quality. Like shit that will stand up and last and feels good to hold. It's just quality, man. That's, not to sound corny, but like that's what Ed would have wanted.
Right. Absolutely. And
Ed would have never put this shit out in the paperback.
Right. Exactly. All the pages are glossy. I mean, they're just beautiful photos too. So I want to get into your work as a director because, for starters, can you just give us your website address? Because, sorry, I can't find it. I can't find Andrew Bennett, director. It's like, I don't, yeah.
My same friend who designed the book is also designing my website.
Okay.
So it's down at the moment. It should be back up next week. It's directed by andrewbennett.com.
Okay. And
but it should be back up next week. He's a good friend of mine. He has a wife and 2 kids and he's moving. So can't really break his balls over get to work on my website.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get that. So
I believe there's a Vimeo page with some work as well.
Okay, great. Well, you've referenced your page and some of the art that's on there, some of the videos and things. Can we rewind back to the Deftones era? I mean, you've worked with Deftones, Katy Perry. Obviously, you spent time at 5150. You've directed videos by Jonas Brothers, Dream Theater. I mean, I think it's incredible because when you watch your work, it's really all very great. And it all looks like the best images. The compositions are beautiful. It's interesting to watch. The editing is beautiful. Can you take us through sort of like your career outside of this book? Because that's really what interests me. I mean, besides obviously the obvious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I started as an assistant to 2 feature directors. So that's like 2000, 2001. And within Hollywood, if you want to be a director, you start as an assistant. It's your foot in the door. And, hundreds of people are vying for this job that pays $350 a week with 18-hour work days. But I was an assistant. One of them had won an Oscar for doing a documentary. I went to a Deftones show one night. I knew Deftones from high school. They were seniors when I was a freshman. And I showed up to school wearing this Fugazi shirt, these cut off Dickies, some Converse, not much different than what I wear now. And I had this like orange spiked hair. And the singer and the drummer from Deftones came up to me on my first day of school, and they said, "What's your name?" At the time I went by Andy. I said, "Andy Bennett." And they go, "Andy, you need to hang out with us, man, because you need some friends." And so they were like my big brothers for like my first year in high school. And then you fast forward to like 2000, I'm an assistant, and they've blown up. Like White Pony came out.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they're like way more commercial than they had ever been off their first 2 records. And I went to a show one night in LA at the Palladium, and I had no plans on asking them for anything. I just wanted to go to a show and see, you know, my friends I used to see play backyards rock the Palladium.
So we're talking like Sacramento. Those guys are from Northern California.
Yeah, from Sacramento.
Yeah. Are you originally from California?
Yeah, originally from Sacramento.
Got it.
And so I go to the show. We're hanging out afterwards. I'm talking to Chino, the singer. He's talking about tour life, like an aspect that rock and roll that I didn't know about. He's talking about how they're playing 6 shows a week. They live on this bus, you know, because they don't make a lot of money selling records. This is their income. So they do this 10 months a year. And he's just kind of telling me this other side of rock and roll that I didn't know about. And, you know, also being like a little emotional about it. And I just muttered under my breath, "Shit, man, that would make a good documentary."
Yeah.
And he goes, "All right, man, let's make a documentary." He goes, "We leave again in 3 weeks. Come on tour with us." And I said, "Well, how much money can you spend on a documentary?" He goes, "Money?" He goes, "Man, I only sold 1 million records. I don't have any fucking money." So the deal is being an assistant is you work 1 year. Yeah. I literally mean 365 days. Assistants mark their 365th day from the first day. If you work less than a year, they forget your name, as they tell you. You work more than a year, they lose respect for you.
Yeah.
They tell you directly. So I needed money, and I needed money quick. And my 365th day was coming up, and the cardinal sin within Hollywood is hit up your boss for money to make your little project.
Yeah.
It would get you fired real quick. But I just figured, I'm out of here in a couple of weeks anyway. What are you gonna do? Fire me? So I hit up my boss. He looks at me and goes, "You know I would never give you money, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "But it's a pretty fucking good idea." So through a series of events over the next week, he got me like 2 days, like 16 hours a day with these other guys who would won Oscars for documentaries, helped me guide through how to tell my story. Got another executive at Fox to teach me how to pitch, got me meetings to go pitch and get money. And eventually I got the money like within 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I'm not behind a desk and I'm on a tour bus one day. And I traveled with them for like almost 2 months. And then we did all of the interviews when we got back home. And then as we were cutting that movie together, I was waiting tables during the day and editing it at night. And the singer called me and said, "We have a 3rd single coming out. Do you want to direct the music video?" And I said, "No, man, not at all." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because I just did a film, man. I'm a feature director, not a music video director, not a music video director." And he goes, "Andy, you're a waiter." And he goes, "I'll give you $10,000. And I heard $10,000 and I thought I was set for the rest of my life. Yeah. I was like, I am so rich. And that was it, man. I did that video, and that video was like really popular. And it got attention. And then Deftones are really well respected in the metal world.
Definitely.
And so it was like being vouched for by a mob boss. It's like Deftones have vouched for me. So I did some other stuff with them, and then the movie never came out.
Yeah.
Because the label called me, and the head of the label, I'll just out his name, is Guy O'Siri. Mm-hmm. And Guy O'Siri calls me up and he says, "I watched your fucking movie." I go, "Yeah, what'd you think?" He goes, "I thought it was dark and depressing." I said, "Thank you." And he goes, "That's not a fucking compliment." And I tried to explain to him that, one, you haven't been in the loop on this. And I apologized with all some professional shit I said. And then I pointed out that, listen, man, I was influenced by two movies that were very real. I like The Last Waltz on The Band. Like, I thought the interviews were really raw and genuine. I liked the way it was shot. And I said, and I liked Meeting People Is Easy on Radiohead because it was very lo-fi and simple. And he yells, I'm trying to turn Deftones into Limp Bizkit, not Radiohead. And 21-year-old me goes, why would you want to turn them into a band that sells 5 million instead of a band that sells 12 million? I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
He did not. All he screamed was, fuck you, your movie's never coming out.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And then you fast forward, I think like 14 years, 15 years. This movie has become such a cult thing amongst the Deftones world. And the bass player passed away about 8 years ago in a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a middle finger to the record label, and I like to think Ed would be proud, I sold the movie to all these fans for $5.
Yeah.
And donated all the money to the charity for the bass player.
That's killer, man. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't think that was funny either.
So
you only live once, man. Fuck them. What are you gonna do? Bend over for record labels all the time? Shit.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Where's the exciting story come out of that?
Yeah, right. Seriously. Okay, so I'm going to geek out a little bit. And my show has always done that, where I've talked about the gear and the behind the scenes stuff, production, basically. So, you're starting to do this thing for the Deftones, but what camera do you have? I mean, this goes back 15 years or whatever. And
20 years.
20 years. What camera did you have? I mean, did you put that in the budget for production? I mean, how does that work for you?
Well, when I pitched the movie, I pitched to 3 companies, and my boss came in one day and said, after my pitch meetings, he walked up to my desk and he said, all 3 companies greenlit you. Which one do you want? And I picked the smallest company. He said, why are you picking the smallest? And I said, because I have no idea what I'm doing, and they're going to let me fuck up the most.
Yeah.
And of course, my boss had to take credit for that one too. He goes, I taught you well. But I went to this like company that was a friend of his, and they did like A&E documentaries.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have to rent stuff. They had all of this gear there. So we shot that Deftones film. Oh my God, dude, I'm old, man. on the Canon XL1 and 2.
Okay.
And we shot it on that because at the time that camera had interchangeable lenses,
mm-hmm.
which was a big deal to filmmakers.
Yeah.
And on mini DV tapes.
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
And then it went.
That's incredible to think back.
Went from that to the Panasonic DVX 100 because that shot 24 frames per second, and that changed the game.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden we could shoot at 24 frames.
From what? What was? I mean, it would have been 24, 30, or 60. I mean, what was the?
Everything before that DVX 100 was 30 frame.
Okay, 30. Yeah. So you want more cinematic, more film-like looks at 24.
Even your iPhone now shoots at 24 frames per second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what like every movie is shot at.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you've ever seen, except sitcoms. So, yeah, man. Like we started off, stuffing our pockets with mini DV tapes and trying to keep track of them, label them, digitize them.
What's your production team like at the time?
2 guys.
2 guys. So it's a guy. Yeah, it's a guy carrying the stuff, doing the audio, and it's a guy, the main guy doing camera work.
Yeah, there's a guy who would like kind of run a second camera here and there from the crowd. Deftones, like they were having a camera around at that time was a new thing.
Yeah,
bands were not used to this shit.
Yeah.
So as far as the bus, I was allowed to ride the bus, but not them. So they followed in a rental car.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been fun.
They didn't have anything against them. It was just like, dude, the bus is already small, and we kind of don't know you guys.
Right.
And one of them was 6'6". That was never going to work out.
Yeah.
Just a note to people who haven't been on a tour bus: that shit is small and cramped. It looks fancy from the outside, but it is not on the inside. So I had those two guys, and then one of them got in trouble for weed in Texas, and Deftones were like, that dude has to go home.
Yeah.
So, and then the other guy made it about another week. But tour life is not for everybody.
Right.
It's a different life. And that guy, God bless him, he was a really nice guy, but he just decided, and I forget where we were, but he was like, I got to go home, man. And I was like, okay, I'll finish this film myself.
Yeah. So you're doing all the editing. Are you doing all the After Effects, things like that? I mean, is that all encompassing for you at the time?
Yeah. On the Deftones doc, I hired a friend of mine to edit it because he knew Final Cut Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get into the tech side, we're on Final Cut Pro 1.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Like where if you had issues, you actually called them. There was no Google search for your Final Cut Pro issues. There was no Reddit forum. Yeah. And so I told my friend, I was like, he was like a cool stoner buddy. And I was like, look, man, I can get you paid really well on this edit. I said, but here's the trade-off. You have to teach me how to edit. I get to ask you anything at any time about anything I want. Yeah. And he was like, deal. And I would give him some space and like leave here and there, but he would teach me during the day. And then at night I would go in and we had like a backup drive and I would just practice editing off of the backup drive, just practice all night long. And then eventually I just took over that edit. And then from there, I realized that I enjoyed editing. That's where like, that's really where a final product comes out.
Right. Same.
I can make 3 different music videos with the same footage. And also I don't have to pay an editor.
Absolutely. It's the same thing. Yeah. You can control each frame. You can control when the cut is before the punchline. I was like that too. And again, you said, there's no budget that goes into the editor. It's just your sweat equity at that point,
Yeah. And music videos, like top-notch editors are really good, but music video editors, like your fly-by-night friend of a friend, you've got to know how to sync drummers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When I did the Deftones film, the drummer from Deftones flew to LA, got a hotel room, made me set up the edit bay in his hotel room, and went frame by frame explaining to me how I was 5 frames off of everything. Yeah. 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 It's crazy. So now I have this this sense of pride where I'm like, I can sync the fuck out of a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, as a quick aside, I just did a project last year where it was Vinny Appice from Dio. And we did, 2 full days of 8-hour days for a video lesson app. And it was, it's 4 cameras. So the cameras have to sync, to the audio, but the audio isn't going to sync because of the proximity of the microphones to the camera. Always a pain in the ass. And you get really good really quickly just doing the first one. You're like, well, I got to figure this out. How do I do this? And it just becomes more visual than it is the audio sync or anything automatic, So
yeah, with the Deftones film, when the other 2 guys, when the one guy bailed and the other guy just became a risk to everybody, I had to figure out how I'm going to shoot these live shows. Yeah. In the end, I'm cutting together performances, but I only have 1 camera. Yeah. So the rest of the tour, I mapped it out. So I had the layout of the stage, and I knew that last night during Digital Bath, I was stage left behind the bass player. So tonight I'll go stage right behind the guitar player. And I kind of rotated myself and had all these diagrams, just these pieces of paper with all these maps of how I'll shoot tonight. Yeah. You said, you got to get it done, man.
Yeah. The other mindset is usually for me, I only have 1 good camera and the other ones are just supplementary DSLRs. So you're just well, I only have 1 really great camera. So it's going to have to be multiple takes of the same song so that you can get all those angles and stuff.
And I didn't try to trick the viewer.
Yeah.
Sometimes I show it's just a new city in the middle of the song, or I'm not trying to trick the viewer. It's clearly 1 camera.
Right.
But it didn't matter because it was dark and depressing.
This podcast sponsored by Strap-Tight Strap Locks, the most secure, affordable guitar strap locks on the market. Install and remove in under 2 seconds. No need for any tools. Endorsed by legends such as Joe Satriani, Glenn Hughes, Carl Verheyen, and more. Get yours at straptight.com.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, man, how are we going?
Good. Actually, I got a question. As a documentary filmmaker, and what has been your biggest hurdle that you've kind of encountered? Because I get to see, is it dealing with the record label and trying to get your vision across as a director? Is it dealing with the band?
It was getting the band to sit down and talk. With Chino from Deftones, getting him to sit still and talk and really be honest and open was almost impossible. I finally nailed him down one night at his house, but prior to that, I would come over to do the interview and he would say, "I don't want to do the interview, man. Let's go snowboarding." And so I found a way to strike these deals with him that we can go snowboarding, we can go down to Venice and you can get drunk. We can do whatever you want to do, but I'm interviewing you while we do it. So some of the interviews are in the car while he's driving, smoking a joint, but he was relaxed and laid back and giving me what I needed. But interviewing those guys was a hurdle. The drummer didn't want to be too serious. The guitar player insisted that he was on a media blackout, so he didn't want to do the interview. And I said, "What if I set up a white sheet and I backlight you and we just shoot you as a silhouette?" And he said, "Fine, I'll do that." And then the bass player, notorious for his long dreadlocks, had me come over to his house where he had 2 chairs sit up in the backyard. And I said, "What happened to your dreads?" And he said, "I cut them off." And I said, "Yeah, I see that." He goes, "And then I buried them." I said, "Where'd you bury them?" And he goes, "You're sitting on them." Wow. Then he goes, "Here's how I do interviews, man. You're going to ask me a question. And if I want to answer it, you'll hear me speak. And if I don't, you won't hear me speak." So interviewing those guys was tough. But once you get comfortable and once you get them talking, then they start kind of pouring their hearts out.
Yeah. You get into a conversation and it just starts flowing. I noticed that too. It's everyone's got their chest puffed out, and then after a while, it's just everybody's just normal humans.
Yeah, and then those guys and I were comfortable together. I'd already been on tour with them. We had a history before that, so they were a little more comfortable talking to me. And that's kind of how it's been with all the artists that I've worked with. It's I don't know. I just find this comfort level. I get along better with musicians than filmmakers.
So let me rewind a little bit. So when you got that call that you thought was from Glenn Ballard, but it turned out to be from Eddie, and Glenn gave you the address, you hung up the phone, and what was the very first thought that went through your mind? I want to go back to bed, or what the hell's happening?
It was more like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
Why does Eddie Van Halen want to talk to me at 3:00 in the morning? But I don't know. It's kind of been how my career goes. It's little adventures like this pop up, and I don't say no to them. I'm just why wouldn't I get out of bed at 3:00 in the morning to go see Eddie Van Halen, especially after this phone call? But yeah, it was what the fuck is going on? And then even when I got there, it's on a brightly lit place. It's kind of, built into the Hollywood Hills. It's surrounded by trees. There's no lights really. Glenn Ballard comes walking out, and I'm expecting Glenn Ballard to explain to me why I'm here and what's going on. And all he did was hug me and say, "Good luck, man. Good luck." And then he just disappeared into some Glenn Ballard mist. And then that's when Eddie came walking out with no shirt, a pair of jeans held together with a piece of rope, some combat boots held together with tape, smoking a cigarette. And he just walked right up to me and he goes, "So you're Andrew Bennett?" I said, "So you're Eddie Van Halen?" And he goes, "Last time I checked." And, he asked me if I drank. And at the time I did. He cracks open a bottle of wine. I asked him, "Where do I grab a glass?" And he just laughs, holds up the bottle and tells me, It comes in a glass. And then we just sat there for like 2 hours, passing a bottle of wine back and forth, shooting the shit. You know, he had asked me, what do I know about him and his band? And I said, well, I don't want to offend you. He goes, offend me. I said, I know the song Jump because it came out when I was 4 and it's called Jump. He smiles. He goes, what else? I said, I know the song Right Here, Right Now because it was in a Pepsi commercial. And that's all I know. I said, I don't mean to offend you. He goes, offend me? He goes, Andrew, I haven't met anybody in 30 fucking years that doesn't know everything about me. And he laughs. He goes, you and I are going to get along just fine.
How soon after that are you basically living at 5150 with your gear and documenting and finding all the different corners to film from?
Yeah, that was like 2 years later. I mean, in 2004, when I first went up there with Glenn Ballard, they were with Hagar was there at the time. They were recording a song called It's About Time.
Okay,
so I created a music video for that, kind of documented those sessions for a couple of weeks. And then in 2006, Eddie called me and he was very direct. He goes, Andrew, you need to come back up here. I fired that fucking bass player and I replaced him with my kid. You should be filming this shit.
Wow.
And so I went up there, and then around that same time, I broke up with a girlfriend, sleeping on a friend's couch. Then I ended up like spending many nights just sleeping on the couch at 5150 because I would shoot all day, but I was still directing music videos. Like I don't want to be crass by mentioning business sides, but I wasn't being paid to shoot Van Halen. So I had to make a living. So I was editing, I would just sleep on the couch there. So it was like 2 years later. And then all of a sudden I'm sleeping on the couch at 5150 while I'm editing a Jonas Brothers music video.
Which I watched last night. And I mean, the intention was cool. I mean, the video, it looked fantastic. The lighting is beautiful. Everything's cool as hell. I don't know about the content, and maybe I won't comment on that, but yeah, it looked great. Can you tell the story about, I know we're jumping around quite a bit, but there's a story about that Jonas Brothers video where bringing the Matt Bruck, you know, I've heard you say this in another video where you were editing these videos with Matt Bruck just feet away.
Oh, yeah, like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Poor Matt Bruck had to sit there and deal with me editing things. I mean, I was a gentleman and it wasn't loud.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he wasn't in there every minute of the day, but he was in there pretty much all the time. And so I would be editing these music videos, and the Jonas Brothers, nobody had a problem with. I did some stuff for like Perry Farrell. They had no issues with Perry Farrell. And then I got a Nickelback video. And in the editing, so I always joke that Nickelback, the only rock and roll credit these guys will ever get is that your music video was edited at 5150. That's what you guys get. Congratulations. That said, it was the only time Eddie Van Halen ever walked in, threw a pair of headphones at me, and said, "You're gonna have to wear headphones while you edit this shit." Wow. So I had to wear headphones for Nickelback.
I want to ask you a question about the 5150 building. I have another friend who went there and shot some stuff, but you know, you lived there for, you know, several months, a year, whatever it was. So it's this big, long, rectangular building. This, you know, I know Eddie's told stories that he was having the building built as he told the building inspector it was a racquetball court. Who knows? Whatever the story was back in the day. So I've always seen these videos at 5150 where there's like this front lounge area. There's like, you know, whatever it is. There's like, they had video games in the back, what have you. Is this where you're staying? Is this where you lived when you lived at 5150?
Yeah, so basically 5150 is divvied up. So there's like that bigger room that looks like a living room almost. Mm-hmm. Like that's where Wolfgang and I would play guitar.
Yeah.
And in that room was like that setup, a couple of chairs, a chair that I left behind that I always wanted back. missed that chair. But and then my desk and Matt's desk. So there's that, and then there's like a little kitchenette area.
Yeah.
With like a sink and a fridge and a couple of shelves. That's in the same space as Ed's workbench. And then there's the area where he stands when he plays. It's like right next to the board. So him and Wolf would stand at the board basically. And then there's a vocal booth, which obviously was not getting used. And then Al's drum room, which is like bigger than any New York City apartment I ever had.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Are you in contact at all with Wolfgang? Has he reached out to you at all?
No, I haven't heard from him. I mean, in the world of Van Halen, you know, the fact that I wrote a book and haven't heard anything is good news.
That's good news for sure. Yeah.
That is good news. Like Wolfgang's not going to go out there and promote my book, but I hope he understands that, you know, he got to see the respect that was given. You know, like a lot of readers have sent me emails and they're like, I really like the fact that you didn't go with gossip, that you give us the idea of what it's like to just hang out there. And that's exactly what I was going for. So hopefully, I hope Wolfgang freaks it.
Yeah, I was impressed with just the humor in it from what I've read. You know, the way you tell the stories is a very kind of, you know, you can, like, when you're reading it, you can feel like you're in there with you.
Yeah.
It's just a very, very cool way. Like you said, there's no gossip in there. It's just matter of fact. And the story of him with the Uzi is hilarious, you know.
That is a crazy story. I'd love to hear that again.
Yeah, I can tell that right now. So Eddie, when I was a little more comfortable asking him questions, like after a couple of months, you know, when we were way more casual, like, I don't know. I was, you know, while I was young for Van Halen, I wasn't ignorant to the legacy of Eddie Van Halen. Mm-hmm. So I, you know, I was still intimidated. But eventually we got more comfortable. And so I asked him once, what's with all the property, man? Because wealthy people in Los Angeles who live in the hills will buy what's called a lot. So you buy 1 lot, 2 lots, 3, 4, or 5 if you've got serious money. And Eddie bought like 38. So he owns like this entire side of a mountain in the Hollywood Hills. And I asked him once, why did you buy all the property? And he goes, because I didn't want any fucking neighbors.
Wow.
I thought, well, dude, when you sell 100 million records, guess what you get? No neighbors.
That's incredible.
But the place is also laced with security cameras for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And nobody ever comes over. It's not a place you come to hang out. If you aren't there to serve a purpose, then you don't need to be there. It's all work. That's it. Like, the only visitor I ever had was my dad. That was because Eddie insisted on meeting my dad.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, he jammed with him for like 20 minutes. Made my dad's day.
Wow. That's incredible.
So nobody's ever there. But one day we had these guys come to work on the roof at 5150. And, you know, everybody was a little like, it's weird having dudes on the property. But at one point, Eddie goes out to this garage where he keeps a lot of guitars. The collection of Eddie Van Halen guitars was like, I don't know how many times I like had to pick up Frankenstein off my desk or off a chair because he would just set it down somewhere. So they're all in this garage, and he goes out there and just kind of jimmies the handle a little bit. There's no sense in like locking it. It's his property. But these guys are on the roof and they see him do it. And for the rest of the day, he's convinced these guys are coming back. Convinced. Andrew, I'm telling you, these motherfuckers are going to come back. They saw how I got into the garage. And so I told him, I said, Eddie, you live in a fortress. Nobody is breaking in here. I said, your private security is the actual LAPD. Like, they actually drive around your property with spotlights for free.
Wow.
And so, but he's convinced, and sure enough, at like 3 a.m, because everything exciting happens at 3 a.m, I just hear the sound of an Uzi. And so I wake up, I go outside, and here comes Ed walking out of the canyon with a cigarette in his mouth, no shirt on, carrying a fully loaded Uzi. And he just walks up to me, and all he says is, "I told you they'd come back."
Wow.
And I was like, and I laughed, and I was like, "Eddie, you're messing with me, dude. Like, that did not happen." And he goes, "You want to come watch the tapes?" Because again, there are security cameras all over the place. So don't break into 5150. It's a really bad idea.
Damn.
And in that moment, I was really more like when I believed him, my thought then turned to, I heard gunfire. Do we need to call somebody? and he goes, "I was downstairs playing guitar. I looked up at the monitors and I saw those three guys jump in the back gate." He goes, "So I grabbed what I had," which is apparently an Uzi. Oh, and I'm sorry, night vision goggles as well. and that's what he had. He goes, "So I climbed up the driveway, Andrew. I got behind him. I cocked that gun. And I told him, 'Freeze, motherfuckers. I know how you got in. And you're not going out the same way.'" So he marches them down to this like base part of the canyon. And then he just tells them, "You see that mountain, motherfuckers? Start climbing." So he makes them climb this mountain in the middle of the night as he's smoking a cigarette, wearing night vision goggles, and holding an Uzi. I don't know if you're catching this, but Eddie Van Halen was a badass.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And I said, "But Eddie, I heard the gun." He goes, "Oh yeah, that." He goes, "Well, Andrew, they weren't climbing fast enough." I told them that. I said, "Climb faster, you motherfuckers." He looks at me and he goes, "You know what one of them said to me, Andrew?" And I'm just sitting there dumbfounded. I'm like, I have no idea what one of them said to you. One of them yells, "I'm climbing as fast as I can." And I told him, "I seriously doubt that." So I fired off some rounds at his feet. I said, "Ed, you can't just fire an Uzi at people in the middle of the dark." And he goes, "Andrew, come on." And he just points to the night vision goggles and goes, "I can see them." Dude. He goes, "Besides, Andrew, I was just shooting at their feet. I wasn't actually going to kill them." He goes, "And besides, you've never seen three motherfuckers climb a mountain so fast."
Dude. But you know, the thing that's funny is the LAPD story of them showing up is actually a beautiful ending. I just love this part of it.
Well, all of a sudden, the gates to the property open up and the LAPD drives in. But it's not like one or two cars. It looks like a funeral for a fucking cop. Like there's just a procession coming in. Like I've always joked, if you want to like commit a crime within a 2-mile radius of Eddie Van Halen's house, just call 911 first and tell them something's happening at Eddie Van Halen's house. You just cleared out all of North Hollywood because that's who showed up.
Wow.
And all these guys come in and they're running around the canyon looking for these guys. And Eddie's standing there amidst all of it with an Uzi.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yes. Like I would remind the people at home, if you did not write Eruption, don't try to pull this shit off. You must have written Eruption in order to be able to do this. And one cop comes up to him and probably doesn't recognize who he is, or it's just an instinct. He almost draws for his weapon while telling Eddie this gun is illegal in the state of California.
Wow.
Before like a higher up detective walks over in what was basically pajamas and pushes the cop back while showing his badge and tells him, "Son, there's nothing illegal in the world for this man."
Wow. That's incredible.
And
yeah.
I thought, fuck, I should have learned how to play the guitar. God damn it.
So at any point during this whole thing, did you think I should break out my camera and start filming this?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I knew the rules.
Yeah.
Fights, like when him and Alex are getting in fights, like not only do you not film that, you hide like up in the trees. You do not want them to see you because they will drag you in the middle of this and make you choose a side. No, I mean, I was very, very discreet about what I shot. And, I'm not giving away any secrets about, Ed in 2006 when he was still drinking. But,
yeah,
there were bad days. And as somebody 6 years sober, I can tell you that I've had days that I was glad or not on camera.
Yeah, dude. Congratulations on that, man.
So thank you. And so there were some days where I was just like, honestly, like this shouldn't even be on tape. This is a bad day. And the footage isn't going to come out. Like, so I don't want people to see him in 06.
Yeah. You're talking about the bad days footage.
The bad days footage. And then, he was getting better in 06. And then, into 07, he was really clean. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm only talking about something the entire public knows about.
Right. Absolutely.
But no, when it came to the footage, I just decided, I've had all kinds of people call me about the footage, especially in the last 9 months. Do you want to sell us your footage? Everybody from TMZ to people who want to make a Netflix documentary on Eddie Van Halen. Mm-hmm. But I just want to give the footage to Wolf.
Yeah.
I have no desire to sell this footage or hawk it out to people and I just my take is that it's Wolfgang's life. It's his experience and it's his family.
Yeah, absolutely.
While it was a portion of my life and this experience, that's still I filmed Wolfgang's first day of rehearsal.
Incredible.
He deserves to have that. Nobody else. So don't email me about the footage. Stop emailing me about the footage.
I have a question real quick about 5150, something that it's kind of like a myth, and I don't know if it's true, but here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, in San Jose, we have Raging Waters. And I was always told that, Valerie, saw Raging Waters and wanted basically the same thing in the backyard of 5150. Is that true?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, it's the backyard of the house. So the house and 5150 are on the same property.
Yeah.
So there's the main gate that you come into the house, and then the 5150 gate, you would go up this little side road full of cameras so they see you coming. But yes, in the backyard of Ed's house, there is a water slide that goes up into the canyon. You have to walk up steps in the canyon to get to it. Yet again, you sell millions of records. You know what you get? A water slide.
I would put Pirates of the Caribbean under my house, but
Well, it's incredible because there are so many people that, honestly, Andrew, for you to have lived there for a year and to just have full access. I mean, you're driving golf carts around, you've got access whatever you want, and I think it's incredible because, there are maybe tens of millions of people that would love to have been in your shoes. We didn't get to do that. None of us did. But in this book, Eruption in the Canyon, they can get a sneak peek behind that curtain. And I want to talk a little bit about the tape vault. What is your experience about what is available audio-wise? Or you even had said in another interview, everything was professionally audio recorded. Everything. Every day, everything was recorded professionally. So
he had an engineer.
Incredible.
It was Glenn Ballard's engineer.
Yeah.
A guy named Bill Molina, who's just awesome, amazing, and vibed really well up there too. They recorded every rehearsal, and Eddie would listen to them at the end of the day.
Wow. Are we talking? Is it 2-inch tape, or is it? We're in a digital world now, so that's how it's recording?
Digital world now. The Ampeg. There's a bunch of Ampeg tapes there, the tape cases. The walls are lined with them. There were labels of songs where I'm I've never even heard that song. I can't imagine how much unreleased music is there.
Unreal.
It's just walls of tapes. And that's just these one walls in the studio. God knows what is anywhere else.
Right. So can you talk about the David Lee Roth day that he spent there rehearsing? I mean, it's incredible. I saw them in 2007 with Wolfgang on bass, and it was super tight. It was professional, slick. It was like a Vegas show, but really, from the other interviews I've heard you tell, there was one day that David Lee Roth basically came in and just to see if it could vibe.
Yeah, I mean, that was the goal was, can Dave sing? And this is what I was getting that day. Is Dave is coming here today to, one, let's see that he can still sing. And two, can these, can Eddie, Alex, and Dave be in a room together for 2 hours?
Yeah.
So Dave came up, and I was told no cameras that day, which is such a shame. Although David Lee Roth did leave his personalized engraved microphone behind. So there's a nice shot in the book of the David Lee Roth mic sitting on the 5150 board with everybody's names on the tape on the board. But he comes up in a town car. The town car pulls up right next to the studio door. A driver gets out, opens the back door, and opens the door to the studio. So Dave takes literally one step out of the car, and he's in the studio. Then when he's getting ready to leave, the car pulls back up and does the same thing.
Wow.
Everybody was on edge that day, but it went well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're there too, listening to the entire whatever they're playing that day.
Yeah. Dave sounded like Dave, Yeah. Dave off stage is basically Dave on stage. There's not a huge difference, man. There's not a huge difference between the two.
Yeah.
So yeah, they vibed, obviously, because they went on tour.
Incredible.
Many times.
Were you a guitar player at all? And if you weren't, are you now because of your experience with Eddie?
No, I want to take guitar lessons, but I've never been able to play the guitar. And so I did ask Eddie one day, because you have to do this if you're in a position. I was like, hey, man, can you teach me something on guitar? And he goes, let me see your hands. I hold up my hands, and he goes, your fingers are too small. You'll never be a guitar player. And I was like, thank God I didn't want to be a guitar player. What a devastating moment this would fucking be, man. And of course, every guitar player I've talked to since then is like, he's fucking with you. Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, I did ask him. He told me my hands were too small, but my dad was in town once, and Eddie insisted on meeting my dad. And so my dad came up, he plays guitar. So they shredded a little bit together.
It's incredible. I see we have about 10 more minutes. Andrew, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been really amazing. And I always say there are certain people that I meet in this world that you'll never be able to peel back all the layers. And it's always going to be interesting when you talk to them or listen to them speak. And you've been one of those guests for me. And I really, like I'm saying, thanks so much for being on the show. I want to sort of turn it over to Bill, because I've done most of the questions. But Bill, did you have anything else that you want to jump in on?
I'd love to know what you're working on next, if you can tell us.
I'm working, it's kind of a complete 180 degrees. So when I wrote the book, I really liked the process of writing. And music videos are kind of dead, and bands don't have imagination anymore. So I really like writing, and I've been sober for 6 years, and, I did hardcore rehab, and I've gone to, hundreds of AA meetings, and I've seen the books that people put out, and everything is just kind of like beating around the bush, blame your alcoholism on other people. And, it's like, again, like I inherit this like kind of take on life from Eddie. My take on alcohol is, why don't you stop blaming everybody, own your shit, and get it together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I have a very blunt, I like AA, I like the 12 steps. However, the 12 steps are antiquated. They're 100 years old. How are you supposed to get sober, have this program work for you that, and I'm not trying to be funny, but that never mentions a late night Facebook post?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm starting to work on that book, but I am wrapping up a little like short that I did a couple weeks ago. And I guess I can talk about it. I went up to Washington and Oregon and spent a week with the Hells Angels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And these guys had never been filmed before, never let a camera into their clubhouse, nothing. And it turns out they're really nice guys.
Wow.
Can you tell us how that even came about?
Yeah, I met somebody through the Van Halen World book came out, and he's not in the club, but he's friends with, and I'm not giving anything away here, you can Google this man. His name is Smilin' Rick. So if you Google Smilin' Rick, and Hell's Angels, you can read a bit about this guy. But he's a legend in the Hell's Angels. Like, he kind of runs the Northwest. He has these, obviously a ton of stories. He's this really interesting cat. So they just wanted to do like a little short film on him. And so I think it's only going to be like 20 minutes because these guys don't talk.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about tough interviews? There's the tough interview, man.
Yeah.
Get the Hell's Angels to say anything. Like, I was really my focus was on the guy, Smilin' Rick. But when I interviewed a couple of guys, and Rick was in the room at the time, and these guys were looking at me with the fear of God in their
Yes.
Like, I'm talking to a camera. Is this okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I couldn't turn it down. It was, low budget thing. But again, it's like, do I want to say no to this experience? Why don't I just go take a week and bed myself at the Hell's Angels and see what their life is like? Really nice guys.
Here's another geeky question. What gear are you taking with you?
On that, we ran with Black Magics.
Oh, okay. So you're Black Magic level. See what I'm saying? It's like, it's pretty incredible when you talk to the real deal directors, the real deal filmmakers. Aria, Alexa, you're hearing that. You're hearing Black Magic. So I know this is going to sound completely off topic, but it's completely on topic for me because I just love hearing the production behind the scenes. What's that like are you setting that up on a tripod and do you have a limited amount of time that the thing will actually run? Is there maintenance on it in real time?
In real time, it's really just about keeping the dirt and the dust off of it and keeping it clean. Mm-hmm. We have a ton of batteries, so we don't worry about battery life. And we did the interview on a tripod, but like, they had this rally the day after we got there, and it was like hundreds of them from all these chapters from all over. And so that day we just went handheld with the Black Magics, which, if you've never mounted up a Black Magic and put it on your shoulder, it's fucking heavy. And we're roaming around this crowd of Hell's Angels that have never seen a fully rigged up Black Magic camera being pointed in their faces. But, Eddie Van Halen wasn't used to a camera either.
Yeah.
But,
pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I, part of the reason I got in with those guys, that they went with me, was because of Van Halen, and not because they're Van Halen fans, but because they knew I could be trusted.
Absolutely.
Like, this guy had this inside look at this guy. Then he ends up writing a book with respect. He doesn't talk shit.
Absolutely.
And he also kept his mouth shut for like 14 years.
That's a big deal.
I wanted to bring like 3 or 4 guys, but again, it was kind of like being around a band. They want you as limited as possible.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend who, when I was doing some promos for the replica, I vouched for him to Eddie, and I said, I need this guy up here for a few days. And Eddie was like, well, I want to meet him first. And so him and Eddie got along great. Him and Wolfgang got along great. And he's my friend Jack. And Jack has always been like the guy that I can bring on for the more sensitive jobs.
Yeah.
Eddie Van Halen, the Hell's Angels.
Yeah.
So crew-wise, no, man. The budget wasn't really there.
Yeah.
We had too much gear to fly, so we drove the 18 hours from LA up to Washington. It's one of those gigs where it was like, this isn't really going to pay me anything, but fuck it, I'll hang out with the Hell's Angels for a weekend.
Absolutely. I can understand that for sure. Eruption in the Canyon, 212 Days and Nights with the Genius of Eddie Van Halen, written and photographed by Andrew Bennett, has been our guest. And Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to have you back on the show anytime.
Anytime, man. I've got plenty of stories to tell about the legends and the great man that he was. And sorry, I got to throw this in there. Please don't buy the bootleg on Amazon.
Absolutely. And can you tell folks, once again, remind folks where to get the official Eruption in the Canyon book?
EruptionInTheCanyon.com.
That's easy enough. Eruption in the Canyon is the book. Again, Andrew Bennett, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.